Honorable members, let me, before opening this meeting, humbly apologize for being a few minutes late. We've culturally started meetings all on time. So today is just, when it rains in Cape Town, people think that they are getting wet. So in my drive here this morning, I found myself stuck in some quite complicated traffic. I couldn't navigate my way through. So in the absence of blue lights in the car, I had to use the ones on my phone. But they got me here nonetheless. Good morning. And I see Honorable Molefe is here. Honorable Molefe le guy. How are on? Ke leboga ke le bona. Le bose ka jeo. Le tlile ka pa mantaga. Ka mantaga. But it's good. It's you know the Appropriations Committee is here. We're meeting on a Monday. We also go to Limpopo for public hearings. There's a lot that's going on here. But honorable members, let me then begin the meeting. We have a short but long agenda with a lot of discussion, a lot of work that needs to be done. Honorable members, today gives us an opportunity to really set the process going forward in terms of the meetings. So what I'm going to do is, that is the nature of the agenda that is before us. We have two reports to consider, and naturally the items follow on from each other with a motion of desirability to adopt the first report, and then we move on to the public sector and related payments bill, which will then be the first report we will consider. I'm hoping we'll get through that so that we can then begin to prepare it as it will be debated tomorrow in the National Assembly. And then we finish with a motion of desirability for the Division of Revenue bill. And then we will then consider the 2025 Division of Revenue bill. That is in essence the agenda for today. We have set today aside precisely to deal with these two reports without any other disruptions, whether it's a sitting or any other thing. I'm committed to making sure we get through it in full detail so that we can allow members to make inputs and we can ensure that as a report and as a committee, we've satisfied ourselves with the inputs that go in there. With that being the agenda, may I ask if there's a member who would like to move for the adoption of the agenda? Honorable Bateman will move. Is there a member who would like to second that? Honorable Lekhanyane is here. Just in terms of opening this morning, let me note a number of the apologies for today. The apologies that are before us are Honorable Kwankwa, who is on study leave. Honorable Douglas, who I'm going to, Honorable Molefe, I'm going to safely presume you will then be co-opted in the place of Honorable Douglas. Is that correct? So let me deal with that matter last. We have apologies from Honorable Kamede, and then we've got an apology from Noliolo Makazi, who is on leave, and Mr. Majosi, who is our media person, has sent an apology today. Those then being the apologies, and noting the apology of Honorable Douglas, are there any other additional apologies from any other member? Honorable Kalega Mazibuko.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Sikede will be arriving late. He couldn't get the flight from Kimberley yesterday, but he's landing at 9:30. Yeah.
No, that is well noted in that. Honorable members, given my earlier notice, is to say that naturally, Honorable Molefe, as a co-opted member of the committee, Honorable Molefe, is that so? Let me allow the MK party to speak on this matter.
It is indeed so, Chair.
Honorable Molefe, welcome. That being dealt with means that Honorable Molefe has got full voting rights in the committee today as a co-opted member in place of Honorable Douglas. I think it's important to establish that upfront so that members know the process going forward. With the apologies and the welcome of new members, Honorable Molefe, I want to say to you up front, when you get nominated to play for the national team, the protocol is different from all the other committees you have been to. This is the Premier League, so welcome. Perhaps. But thank you, Honorable Molefe. I look forward to our engagement today. With that in mind, Honorable Mashile, may I ask you to read into the record the motion of desirability as it speaks to the pension and related matters bill.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning, everyone on the platform. Motion of desirability, public sector pension and related payments bill. That in the opinion of the committee, the legislation is desirable to provide that certain public sector pension, post-retirement medical and other pension-related benefits under legislation and collective agreements are direct charges against the National Revenue Fund and to provide for matters incidental thereto. Thank you, Chairperson.
In principle, the question on the table is whether do we desire to have the respective bill that has been put before us. Is there a member who would like to support and second the motion being put before us? Firstly, if we can adopt the motion of desirability. Honorable Kalega Mazibugo, is there a member who will second the adoption of the motion of desirability as it speaks to the related matters bill? Honorable Lekhanyan. With that, it is then the motion of desirability being adopted. The committee then can proceed to considering the draft report on the respective bill that is before us. We shall then proceed. Thank you very much, honorable members. Typically, I want to make the nature of the process as we go through this is, at first, members would have been given the opportunity to consider the report over the last number of days. Let me make a few remarks that even for me, I had to bring due consideration. The first is that we're dealing with budget version 3. Which has in essence meant that even though you can adjust many items along the go, you can't adjust the time. Because if you have Comrades Marathon to run, it has to finish at a particular time. Whether you start later or earlier, the close time remains the same. I say that to mean that the budget naturally has to be adopted by the 30th of July this year, which in essence means that whether we're dealing with version 1, version 2, or version 3 of the matter, the timeline still remains likewise. And so that's the first issue. So the work that we've got to do here today has an urgency about it because it confronts a particular finishing line as it speaks to when a budget has to be adopted. The second item that I want to raise is the fact that typically our committee goes through this report and will work through this one. We work through it page by page and allow members to make inputs into the respective page that we are in, so as to not have a discussion that is one starts at the end of the report and then we must have a discussion about the first page of the report. So we do that so that members have also got the opportunity to make inputs, make submissions as they go. Members equally so would have been sent, as I said, the reports timeously in terms of how we process the issue. So I'd like to appreciate that members can make inputs into the text that is before us as we work through. And then lastly, that it is our intended objective to finish this first report and have it ATC'd so that the debate tomorrow can proceed, notwithstanding the 3-day rule to which we will then speak to the Chief Whip, have engaged with the Chief Whip to request of the National Assembly to waive the 3-day rule. So procedurally, that is how I'd like to proceed today, so that the discussions are guided in that manner. Honorable Molefe.
Chair, just a small correction. This is not a continuation of any process. You will remember that the court set aside the previous budget's attempts by the National Treasury to pass the budget through. So that by setting aside, it means that we have to start the process de novo. And the minister even used those words, that the process has to start de novo. So let's not put ourselves under pressure. We have to do things properly and not be burdened by the fact that there were previous failed attempts. This process must get the attention that it deserves without being burdened by the fact that there were failed attempts in the past. And so I just wanted to correct that, Chair, and say that we're not working towards any deadline. What we are doing here is we are going through the report thoroughly and giving it the necessary attention and diligence that it requires, without saying this is 3.0, 2.0. There is no 3.0, it's actually 1, because the process had to start de novo, which means right from the beginning. Thank you.
Honorable Molefe, I don't want you to misinterpret what I'm saying. All I merely alluded to, and I take your input quite correctly, this is an independent process in and of itself. All I'm merely alluding to is that as we deal just with this process alone, what has not changed is the deadline that speaks to when the budget must be passed, which is the 30th of July, is the point I'm merely alluding to. That date is inadjustable, in the sense that if we go into the 1st of August without a budget that is passed, all that will eventually happen is that the legislative process of then insisting that the budget must go into 40%, the spending priorities go adjusted to 40%, then 10%. That is all I'm alluding to. I'm not saying that we mustn't give this particular day and its process its due course. It must be done. That's why we've set as a committee aside the whole day without any other interruptions. That is the point I'm trying to allude to. Thank you, Honourable Member. Let us then move to the first report that is before us. This indeed is the draft report. We don't have to reread. Wait. Sorry, I need to open the correct one. I had the next one in front of me here. So let's start with the first one. Waitsi matlhwaka a ntshokodisa re le kganyane yaanong ga ke shebile mo screening sele ke a bona gore ke lebile kgakala
Oh, re le kganyana o nyakele kofi. At least you.
Oh, get this yon. Ke a bona. Ke tshwantse ke itle yalo. Hey, ke tla itshepisa yalo, ke tla tshwanta ke itle. Right, honorable members, the report is in front of you and certainly in front of me now. We can begin. Let's have a look at page 1 of the report. Is there any member who would like to make adjustments, input into page 1 of the report?
This is the pension one.
Honorable Molefe?
This is the appropriations.
No.
Oh, okay.
This is the pension and related payments bill. Honorable Molefe?
Chair, it's actually it's a general comment. What I found strange was that we are trying to pay these pensions from the National Revenue Fund. And these payments relate to the government employees pension fund and arise out of the activities of the government employees pension fund. Now, the National Revenue Fund is under stress, as we saw, because the minister gave us an austerity budget. Why do we take this money from the National Revenue Fund and not from the surplus that is sitting at the government employees pension fund? Because the government employees pension fund is 110% funded at the moment in terms of its liabilities. And it has excess funds running into close to 300 billion rand. So why are we not utilizing that surplus to fund these incidental things and putting a strain on a budget that is already a shoestring budget as it is?
I hear that point, Honorable Molefe, and I think perhaps maybe I'm going to take it and put it as part of the debate that we can have later in the recommendation, because the intent of the bill is slightly different in this regard. So perhaps maybe if I can ask that particular point, because at this point in time we're just dealing with a background to the issue, and then we'll get to the end in that sense. Is that
as it pleases the chair.
Thank you, sir. Can we then, in the light of that, proceed then to page 2 with members who'd like to make inputs in this regard? We then will proceed, Mashile, to page 3. And then we proceed to page 4. Can we then move to page 5? Can we then get to page 6? Can we then move to page 7? Right. I think, Mashile, there's another page after this, page 8. Now let's wait at this point. Honorable Bateman and Honorable Wakelin, and then Honorable Molefe, then let's have that input as we go in that regard. Starting with Honorable Bateman.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. Good morning to all my honourable colleagues. On 8.4, the concerns raised by the FFC over the rationale behind the provisions. I reviewed again what the FFC said about the bill, and my conclusion was that the FFC actually needs to engage more with National Treasury about it, rather than the committee engaging more, because I think through our engagements we've managed to understand what the rationale is for the bill, and I think from what the FFC wrote, they didn't have the benefit of that engagement, and I think as a result some of their comments were actually slightly misdirected, and that's not to blame them, but I think they were just operating with less information than what we had, or less context, shall we say. So my suggestion would be that we remove the last sentence of 8.4. The committee commits to further engage with the Minister of Finance and National Treasury to clarify the concerns raised by the Commission.
So I Let me take. Swiso, and I hear the point that Honourable Bateman is making, because having engaged the chair of the FFC, there's a continual dialogue that they are seeking as far as the IGR framework in terms of their engagement with National Treasury. Can you respond to that particular point so that we can make the appropriate edit as we go? Textually.
It's fine, Chairperson. We can remove that sentence.
We don't have to. Yeah, I think we can clarify it to strengthen the need for the FFC to engage in that regard. I think that's what Honourable Bateman is requesting.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, in view of the comments, I think I underlined what Honourable Bateman said, to say that instead of just doing away with the whole idea, we should rather direct it to say that the FFC is the one that has to engage with the minister, not necessarily the committee, based on the motivation that you say. So we retain the sentence, but we change the meaning, if that is acceptable. Okay.
Honourable
we can,
yeah?
Chairperson, we can, I'm agreeing that let's delete the last sentence, but we can't put it in our report that the FFC must engage with them. Is that they've got their own processes, so we can delete that sentence. I'm fine with it.
Okay. Honourable Molefe, just on this point,
Yeah.
that Honourable Bateman raised.
Chair, we don't have a problem with the committee helping to facilitate the discussions between the Treasury and the FFC. Although there is a legislative obligation to consult the FFC on the budget, the FFC always complains that the necessary consultations do not happen, they do not happen in time. It looks like there is something wrong between the FFC and the Treasury. So I don't see a problem with us or this committee playing a role in facilitating that. You see, when people don't talk, you see what happens in Iran. It's because people don't talk. So let's encourage more and more debate and consultation so that, for the sake of peace, Chair.
I think part of the dilemma is there is an IGR process, and that's the point that I'm just trying to find the right language, because the FFC's biggest burden is that the IGR process isn't always followed in as far as engaging them on matters. That's the fundamental, broader principle. Now, how you phrase that then becomes a function of a recommendation that perhaps could, to underscore the point that Honourable Bateman is making, is to uphold the engagement as it speaks to the issue of the intergovernmental framework, that there must be thorough engagement between that and the FFC and National Treasury. It's nothing. I think we can uphold that principle and state it as that. I'll come back to you, Musa. Or let me take your point, Musa.
Yes, Chair, I think, yeah, we agree. I think to that end, then we can then put that point under recommendations.
Just phrase the point so that you understand as is or rephrased. Sorry, Chair.
I will engage you. I'm just at this point in time looking at the exact text so that we can make input on the basis of a text, so that it doesn't. Honourable Bateman, have you got a proposed text that you'd like to put on the table?
Honourable Chair, I didn't have something worded, but I think just to try and suggest something, I think we're saying that the committee recommends that the Minister and National Treasury engage with the FFC and vice versa, so that there can be mutual understanding of the intent and implications of the bill. How's that?
Okay. Let me get something there. Honourable Talaga Mazibu.
Well,
Can you put the microphone on, because
sorry, Chair. Oh, Chair, I'm debating with myself here to say, It is also the responsibility of this committee on behalf of Parliament to hold the executive to account. For me, when I read this, I didn't see any issue if the committee commits to further engage the Minister and National Treasury, because they have to report to the committee anyway. So, yeah, I maybe unless I misunderstand the issue. Thank you.
So in part, and perhaps maybe this may be a point of clarification, we have in the past, through the Budget Council, of which I serve on behalf of the committee, sought to find the best ways for the FFC and National Treasury to be able to engage Honorable Bateman. So what I would rather say is that rather than trying to conflate too many issues, that ultimately that the intergovernmental framework, as it speaks to the ministry's engagement with the FFC, be upheld. And as a committee, we want to ensure that that process, because it's our laws, Parliament has a duty to make sure its laws are upheld. So however way you phrase that, I think what does that sentence say? This is that the Minister of Finance and National Treasury engage with the FFC. Leave it over the concerns raised as stipulated with the Intergovernmental Relations Framework. That is it. I would leave it at that.
That Chair, what should I do? Should I delete the concerns it raised, or should I leave it as it is?
No, you get comma as stipulated
Okay.
in the Intergovernmental Framework. That's all. Honorable member, yeah.
Chairperson, as a suggestion is that we leave it at 8.4 as it is, and then also highlight the part in question, which is the committee commits to further engage with the minister as a recommendation. But we leave that sentence there as a finding and as a finding at 8.4 as a finding and as an observation of the committee. We leave it like that, but also highlight on our recommendations now that the committee commits to further engage, or as a suggestion from Honorable Bateman as a recommendation. But we leave that paragraph as it is.
Honorable Bateman, in my reading of this situation, I genuinely do not see it as a hill to die on, as it were. So, given what Honorable Member is saying, and hearing what Honorable Kalega Mazibuko is saying, may I, as it stands now, and where it goes on into the recommendation, can we be happy to leave it in that way? It's two separate inputs, and it grows further in the recommendations, making a suggestion about the intergovernmental framework. Does that satisfy the question you are raising?
Chair, I would just perhaps suggest that we also ask the FFC to submit a written update to us on their view of the bill in the light of the engagement with the National Treasury, just to close the loop on
sure.
What we're saying.
And they would have to, in any case, given the fact that the FFC comes to brief this committee. Right, so we can leave that at that. Honorable Wakelin, you were next on the point.
Sorry, Chair.
Yeah,
Do you mind if I just continue? I had one other.
Oh, there's more.
Just one other.
Yeah, sure, have a go.
So just with regard to that recommendation that's up there, just to finish that up, we're just saying that we would add that the FFC would report back to the committee in this regard. So I don't know, just for the sake of the version that we're looking at on the screen there, if we could add that. And then I think just one other recommendation is practically what we're saying, that now that these become direct charges, if there's an unexpected increase in the level of the expense in a year, it will be charged automatically. It won't have to go through a special appropriation if it's not able to be accommodated within the environments and adjustments within Vote 8 of National Treasury's budget vote. So we do need to be aware of that, I think. And I think the recommendation should be that National Treasury and this committee should be vigilant about the level of charges to the National Revenue Fund in terms of this bill from year to year to ensure that they remain affordable to the fiscus and are not being abused. So that would be a further recommendation that I would like to.
I think there's a point about the engagement between Parliament and it giving, and I think by Parliament it extends to this committee, in dealing with that particular point in the report itself. But it can highlight the fact that to monitor the fiscal prudence of the issue. But it certainly does ask Parliament. Certainly my input into the bill was Parliament's ability to give oversight to this process is absolutely paramount, and of which part of the oversight speaks to the fiscal prudence of the issue, as it says there. Okay, Honourable Bateman, let me try and avoid a dialogue, but you finish your input so that we can finish the point.
Thank you, Chair.
Mashile, can I ask that the guys just hold on for 1 second?
Yeah, so just to clarify, I think there's two issues there, Chair. I hear you on the amendments by the Minister and making sure that Parliament is aware of the amendments. But even in terms of the existing legislation which is listed on the schedule, those charges are going to start coming through directly now to the National Revenue Fund, whereas in the past they've gone under Treasury's budget vote, which means that the process is now changing. So if there are excessive charges that start coming through, they're just going to come through automatically. They're not going to have to go through a budgetary process to have extra budget released through a special appropriation.
Okay.
They're not going to come up when the Finance Committee is reviewing Vote 8 and debating Vote 8. They're all going to be direct charges now. So that puts an added level of responsibility on the Treasury and also on us as a committee to monitor what those direct charges are and to make sure that they don't get out of hand. And I think that's the point that I'm trying to
Fair
make.
point.
Yeah.
Fair point.
Thanks, Chair.
Honourable Mkhonto.
Thanks, Chair. Ngiyakubingelela, Chair, honourable members and colleagues. Chair, my report is on the cell phone and I can't follow the pages. But the last paragraph of the introduction is talking, the whole paragraph is talking about the processes that the bill was subjected to. And then there is the invitation for public comments from the 5th to the 11th of June. And ultimately, we got one stakeholder that participated, Chair. Was that time enough? I'm looking at, I was first amused by the fact that only one stakeholder responded. And then when I went to the processes of the bill, then I saw that it was given only 5 days for public comments.
I think, whilst I take the point that you are making, we often make open submissions to different people, and we had public hearings as for that's why in the report, I think it's a PBO, it's a FFC, it's COSATU, it's all of that, and people choose who can respond to that. I agree with you, more can be done. So I don't disagree on that point, but I do think on the Division of Revenue Bill, there is a recommendation that speaks to how we can strengthen and enhance public participation in the lawmaking process anyways. And I worry that uniquely in this bill, you are going to have limited submissions because there are limited interest groups that speak to this particular matter. So Honourable Mkhonto, I think in this regard, all the committee can bolster the point by saying naturally there should be more public consultation, but on this particular one, I think that is the process that unfolded. So we can't change the process. You can't say something happened in a way it didn't happen. You know, as one guy.
I get you, Chair. I'm thinking about the future.
Yeah.
That maybe in the future we can improve.
Sure.
I mean, 5 days and only one stakeholder responded, and then I was like, maybe by the time people saw all these advertisements, the due date had already gone.
No, nguzwa kahle ke. I think, Sfiso, I don't necessarily, perhaps maybe the point to make would be just to simply, a recommendation that sits similar to the Division of Revenue Bill, that enough time for public consultation be made available. Would that be a fair point? I don't know if you want to respond to that, Sfiso. As the author.
Not really, Chairperson, but I think I get the point. But the reason why we've got the those number of days is because, as you are aware, the bill was tabled. The advertisement, once the budget is tabled, and then there are processes that must take place internally to do the advertisement. So we were limited with that time. But I would rather not say let's make a recommendation, but as a committee we can agree that probably when we must try by all means to start the process of the advertisement early. It can be just our internal arrangement, not necessarily putting something on there.
And I do think, Uguti, we belabor this particular point. And I know these are two separate bills, so I'm not disputing the point you are making, but we do belabor this point as far as the Money Bills and Related Matters Act in the processing of a bill in that regard. So, Honorable Mkonto, if I can, may I suggest that we take that point and then bolster it there, because it's covered in full depth there, whilst these are two separate bills. I hear the point. Let's move. I see Honorable Molefe. I'm going to come to you at the end. Can I go to Honorable Wakelin? You had your hand up, because now we're going into other issues.
Good morning, Chair. Thanks. You make the point in the document that relates to the 3-month threshold. I was actually, in fact, covered by my colleague on the matter of the risks associated with the bill, and he's put it through very properly, so I'm happy with that. But the second part to that talks to the risk associated with the 3-month rule, and I see that you've eloquently picked it up. My question is, what will the recommendation be? Are we saying that we are supporting the bill because we realize the pressures, but that the Minister would come back with an amendment eventually disregarding that 3-month rule?
We make the point that obviously Parliament is supreme, and therefore the consensus must be found. The Minister can't just say, well, after 3 months, I assume the thing is agreed to. That's the point we're trying to make there. If we can strengthen it, then it's Parliament. The fight, even in my inputs tomorrow in tabling the bill, I want to reassert the supremacy of Parliament as it speaks to this issue. So that is the thing. But let me recognize you, Honourable Wakelin.
That's exactly the point. So are we saying, eventually down the road, somewhere along the line, the Minister has to come back with an amendment bill? But I don't read that to be that clear. Unless you say to me, no, that's the intention, then I'm happy with that.
No, the intention is to say consensus. It must come through. You can't. We disagree just with the idea that silence means consent. Principally, Honourable Bateman, on this point.
Yes, thank you, Honourable Chair.
Yeah, Bo.
Then shall we add that recommendation then that the committee recommends that an amendment to the bill should be processed by National Treasury to remove the 3-month deeming provision. In other words, what I'm saying, Chair, is I think we're all agreed that this is a concern, that it just automatically becomes law after 3 months even if Parliament doesn't officially agree to it. And so we're recommending that the bill should be changed. The problem is, because of the timeframes we're working under, we can't change the bill now. We're actually then going to have to put it as a recommendation to say, please, can an amendment be processed later in the year to remove this provision? That's effectively what I'm hearing. Because it's no good no good saying we don't like it, we don't like it, we don't like it, but then we sign it into law, you know. Because at the end of the day, after our objections have been forgotten about, the law will still be there.
I read it to mean that if after 3 months, of course within 3 months, Parliament can also reject. In which instance, once you reject the bill in 3 months, an amendment has to be brought, or you have to find another mechanism. So are we debating the timeline? Because if for example, let me use a different process. This is my interpretation. I don't want to get this wrong. If, for example, we woke up today and said, no, we actually reject the Division of Revenue Bill. We reject the entire, or we reject the Appropriations Bill. And Parliament votes to say it rejects the Appropriations Bill. What follows on from that is that clearly an amendment must be brought forward, right? So that is consistent across any other lawmaking aspect. Us saying it here doesn't just apply here. So what I'm saying is that it is common cause. The point to make is that Parliament must reach a decision one way or another, which means if it endorses, then the process carries on. But if it rejects, an amendment must be brought. So the point is taken. At least that's my reading of the issue. Yeah?
What we're doing with this bill is if we agree to it, then what Parliament is saying is that if in the future we as Parliament do not respond within 3 months, either to approve, edit, amend, reject, we just do nothing, then the changes that the Minister makes to the schedule will become law. So we're agreeing now, effectively we're agreeing now that will always be the case with regard to changes to this schedule on this bill. And I think that's where we're actually giving away the legislative authority, and I think that's where the report is picking up some concerns, and we're asking how to handle that. And I think what we're saying is we should be actually asking for an amendment to remove that, or that's the point of discussion. Yeah.
Let me recognize Honorable Molefe.
Chair, I want to agree, because if we make it automatic that after 3 months, then it goes through. The delay or the 3 months period may pass not because of Parliament's error, but because of other things, including unforeseeable circumstances, including maybe even the Treasury itself dragging its feet, postponing meetings, and so on and so forth. So if we make it automatic, I think it is very dangerous, because then what will happen is that, for example, like this budget, if we had said that if Parliament does not pass it by the 30th of July, then automatically we have a budget. It can't be like that, Chair. We have to sit and consider it. If Treasury would be dragging its feet now if they knew that by the 30th we will have a budget, number one. Number two, the FFC actually points out in 8.4 that it is concerned about transparency. Now, transparency is a cornerstone of our Constitution. The supreme law of the land is the Constitution, and the spirit of the Constitution, which requires transparency and deliberate action, not automatic administrative actions. And so on the basis of that, it's actually not even Parliament, as you said. The supremacy in South Africa is of the Constitution, not even of Parliament, of the Constitution. So the Constitution requires transparency. The Constitution requires that things must be done properly and deliberately. So I would argue that, in fact, if we make it automatic after 3 months on a matter as grave as this, it may be open to a constitutional challenge that that so this thing will come into place even when it has not been approved by Parliament or has not been thoroughly debated and considered. It will just be approved because the time has lapsed. And that is dangerous, Chair.
Honorable Skete.
Thank you, Chair. No, Chair, my question was just, is it not a legislature issue that Parliament can change it, not the minister? But because if we going to put 3 months and say the minister, and then it can be a challenge forward. I think it's a legislative issue that Parliament can amend. It's just.
I mean, I think there's a broad principles about what regulations ministers can table. That's part of the dilemma in the lawmaking issue. But I think the point we're arguing, we all agree that a regulation cannot be assumed in place in the absence of Parliament. That point we all agree on. The point that perhaps maybe I sit on is the point that says within the 3 months, Parliament must reach a decision, one way or another. The point that Honorable Bateman and Honorable Molefe are putting forward is to say, you are putting yourself in a situation where Parliament is the last in the leg, therefore it can be manipulated so that you play to the clock, and then when Parliament can't make a decision, that decision is automated. If I put the two positions on the table. The way to synchronize that, I suppose, is then to say a revised provision must be made that a minister cannot just simply table it and it be to be automatic law. Is that the revised position? Because then if I hear what Honorable Bateman is, when I hear what Honorable Molefe is saying, and all of us are saying, fine, 3 months can be a debate neither here nor there, but the point is, let us find a place where ultimately a law can reach the consensus of Parliament regardless, if I could put it like that. Because Parliament must ultimately make a decision, so that you can't just say, we've given you 3 months, you did nothing, the law proceeds. Am I getting the sentiment of the committee correct? Makakula, and then I see Honorable Wakelin, and then I think Honorable Mkonto, was your hand up, or did I get it wrong? Let me take on Makakula, and then I'll come back. Sfiso? Your hand was up. But it was not up. I think the expression we are trying to make, whether it's a recommendation, I mean, the recommendation is there. I think the only point is that actually, I can't read what it says there. I haven't been to Sion yet, but it says the point is that Parliament has the ultimate authority in the bill, regardless of, and an amendment must be sought to adjust the timeline as prescribed by National Treasury and must be retabled.
I thought at this time we're still ruminating and discussing thoughts about what to do, but I would want to have an informed position where I can capture this as a recommendation. So I'm not sure if what you are saying...
What I'm saying now
yes.
is the sentiment in this room.
Sure.
The room is saying, the committee is saying, that actually Parliament remains the authority, the ultimate authority in the process, and therefore an amendment must be brought that adjusts the timeline as prescribed in the bill by the minister, so that ultimately Parliament can have the final authority over the bill. That is what the committee is saying. Honorable Wakelin.
Chair, let us just be abundantly clear. We don't want this bill to be stopped. We want it to continue. That's why we're trying to find a compromise. And already you are creating a constitutional dilemma here by allowing one minister to do that. I don't know how many other bills or acts currently actually allow that. I don't think there is, but I'm very young still here, and I'm sure by my first term I'll know. My further concern is 8.3, and let me read it to you. Committee is satisfied with the consistency of Parliament lawmaking process. Parliament reserves its right to scrutinise the decision of the executive without being pressurised for time.
Just a second. Sorry, I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry. Chairperson, I'm not sure if we're done with this because I was still trying to put the...
We're not done yet.
We're not done yet.
Just
okay, no, that's fine.
While also acknowledging the importance of timeless distribution. The point is, once you've acted on this act and this act is approved, doesn't matter what's in this report, it will not stand in court. That's the concern. You're talking about 7.9 billion rand a year, 2 million people's pension funds. We need it clean. We need it to be simple. That's where we are, Chair.
So give me, what I'm asking is, we are all in agreement about the point you are trying to make. I'm just trying to find the exact wording that communicates the fact that Parliament is the authority and an agreement must be reached by Parliament. That's it. And therefore, the subsequent sentence says that an amendment to this must be brought to deal with this question of 3 months without trying to create further delays on this issue. Honourable Molefe. Mashile, just hold on.
Chair, we can't go to South Africa and say we were not happy with this, but we were under time pressure. Exactly what we're trying to avoid now. We are not under any time pressure. We are not concerned about these concerns that you have of the GNU. We say we must do the right thing. And the right thing is to send this thing back to effect that amendment that reflects exactly what we are saying now. If it is the feeling of the committee that this thing should not be automatic, let the bill say so. And if it means it must go back, even if the heaven falls, it doesn't matter. We have to do the right thing. There's too much at stake, and it is the Constitution that demands that we must do the right thing, the supreme law of the land.
I don't disagree. Honourable members, the recommendation says that after 3 months, Parliament must be sought. A decision then is automated post facto. Our committee is saying, actually, it is that within that 3 months, if you stick to the 3 month provision, Parliament has the supreme authority to amend, reject, as for the Money Bills and Related Matters Act. And all I'm making a recommendation is, I don't agree with the view that says send the bill back. I take the view that says, the recommendation put in here says that Parliament must exercise a decision within that 3 months. And that in subsequent tabling of similar legislation, that adjustment of 3 months must be done. I think that's what I sense the committee saying. No one is saying the bill in its entirety must go back. That's not the impression I'm getting.
No, we are saying so.
You are saying so. Okay. Then I take your point. So, honourable members, may I make a suggestion that in text, or maybe let me get the text proposal that you had made, Honourable Bateman, about what subsequent amendment must come. Yes?
So, Honourable Chair, yes, I have just emailed the Secretary with recommendation 9.3 and 9.4. So perhaps if you're able to, through you, Chair, to put that up on the screen, we could then have something in front of us to look at.
Mashilo tlo re bontsha di-email tsa go zo zotlhe ga ke batle go itse.
There's nothing to hide, Chair.
Oh.
Spoke about transparency. I think you've been...
You are subscribing to the transparency dictum.
No, is it this one? Is it this one?
That's the one, yeah? Can you read it, please?
The one in red, eh? Or 9.3? Okay. All right. The committee recommends that the National Treasury and the committee remains vigilant regarding the level of charges to the National Revenue Fund in terms of this bill from year to year to ensure that they remain affordable to the fiscus from year to year and not abused. 9.4, the committee recommends that the minister submits an amendment to the bill which the removal of the 3-month section 2 subsection 4, which states proposes that if Parliament does not pass a resolution approving, adopting amendments to, or rejecting the proposed amendments to the schedule within 3 months from the date of its tabling, Parliament is deemed to have approved the proposed amendments to the schedule. Yeah.
Check, can you read it again?
Yeah, okay.
Some of us must translate in our heads as he's reading.
Okay.
Our Molefe. Not there, not that game. So I love it.
All right.
I didn't hear properly. I just want to understand it thoroughly.
The only thing that I don't get, and you can read again, Mashile, the second part is just when.
Yeah. Okay. I want it. Yeah.
Yes, just read that bit.
Okay. Yeah, I will also try to. Okay. Is that clear now? All right. 9.3. The committee recommends that the National Treasury and the committee remains vigilant regarding the level of charges to the National Revenue Fund in terms of this bill from year to year to ensure that they remain affordable to the fiscus from year to year and are not abused.
That one we agree.
9.4. The committee recommends that the Minister of Finance submits an amendment to the bill which the removal of the 3 months section 2 subsection 4 which states proposes that if Parliament does not pass a resolution approving, adopting amendments to, or rejecting the proposed amendments to the schedule within 3 months from the date of its tabling, Parliament is deemed to have approved the proposed amendments to the schedule.
That I'm comfortable with. I think that's the sentiment of the committee, and it's correct.
So why can't it be done now?
We are suggesting that it be done for the next bill. I hear you, but we are suggesting that particularly for what the only provision we can make is to say at the tabling of the next schedule at the budget in the following financial year. Yeah, correct.
But why not now? Honestly, what stops us from doing it now? Because we agree that that is the right thing to do. So what stops us from doing the right thing?
No, it's not doing the right thing. I think that...
No, I think that pushing it through because we feel obligated because of a time pressure is wrong, Chair.
Chair.
I'm conscious of your concern, Honorable Molefe, but I think this matter, the provision we are debating says we are debating this question of 3 months in some ways, and the point to be made is that, to me, I think an amendment can be made and a submission can be made in the next budget cycle. I don't foresee it being as constitutional a crisis as you are putting it forward.
Yeah.
I don't foresee it in that manner. Honorable Bateman?
Honourable Chair, I would just submit that the word right means different things in different contexts. I would submit that there's right as in the optimal way for the wording, and there's right as in immoral or morally bad, shall we say. And we're not saying that this is morally bad. We're just saying that it's perhaps not the best wording, and we can change it with an amendment. But what would be morally bad is if pensioners didn't get paid in the month of August because we hadn't passed our budget. That would be morally bad. And I think that's really where the weight of this committee, the weight we're feeling as a committee, which is that we need to make sure that we get the legislation passed and through so that we can have a budget approved. And I think the eyes of the country are on us to some extent to make sure that we do that and do it well. So I think that's why this is something I think which can pass for the next cycle, and we can get it done. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, we even have it within our authority to present a bill, an amendment bill ourselves as this committee. So subject to guidance, but I think it lies within our own power to make that amendment within the next cycle if
and
necessary.
we can, and part of the discussions we are going to be having substantively is that there's a lot of things that need to happen in the 2026-2027 budget, 2020, that inner year, outer year conversation. But let me not get ahead of myself, because in part, Honorable Molefe, I'm viewing this process over equally so over a 3-year period, but I don't want to get ahead of this issue, so that we don't end up saying to ourselves, is do or die now. Let me take, and I'd like to move from this point because I think it is sufficiently ventilated, and I think the text covers the issue. Honorable Member, Honorable Mkonto.
Your Chair, I'm thinking, Chair, as we are discussing, we are talking about time frames as to in the next budget cycle, that amendment bill must be presented by the minister, but it's not in the recommendation. I don't know, or maybe it's common understanding that in the next budget cycle, when the amendment bill is being submitted, then that clause will be removed.
Or rather to table the bill within the next budget cycle. Can we just put that provision? It's in the second part. It just speaks to the fact that it's within the next budget cycle. Nyabonga, Honorable Mkonto, I think that covers it. Right. With those recommendations on the table, Honorable Molefe and then Bateman.
Chair, gentlemen's agreements make bad law. I mean, the first sentence there says we must rely on the vigilance of the Treasury and the committee. That is bad law. Why don't we write it in such a way? Why don't we have this bill drafted in such a way that we don't have to rely on anybody's vigilance, that we put in checks and balances that make sure that the reliance on somebody's vigilance is not necessary. But no, the one that I came forward to read there.
Oh, perhaps?
No, that's...
Yeah. This is the sentence here. Remain vigilant regarding the level of charges to the national revenue. I think naturally a budget, Honorable Molefe, maybe the word vigilance might be the challenge, and maybe I hear what you are saying, but ultimately the spirit with which Honorable Bateman is putting the point before is what this committee's task and duty always is to remain vigilant. Whatever the item is, this is about pension and related matters, but it could very well be about any other charge. So if the word vigilant doesn't express the sentiment of giving parliamentary oversight to the issue, because that's the legal provision that this committee has been given. So I hear what you are saying. I don't myself, I think the word is not doing anyone's favor. It's about ensuring that we are responsible for the fiscus of this country. And perhaps maybe, I can't debate English, but I think there are superior law that covers the issue. Let me, honorable members, I think that, Mashile, if you can read that recommendation, I think we can move from here.
All right. The committee recommends that the minister submits an amendment to the bill which the removal of 3 months, section 2, subsection 4, that proposes that, open quotes, if Parliament does not pass a resolution approving, adopting amendments to, or rejecting the proposed amendments to the schedule within 3 months from the date of its tabling, Parliament is deemed to have approved the proposed amendments to the schedule. The committee further recommends that the Minister of Finance must table an amendment in the next budget cycle.
Correct. Correct.
Chair, just the word which on the first line should be with.
With.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Right, honourable members, I move that
It should be
with.
okay. With. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Molefe.
I just wanted you, Chair, to note our reservations.
I agree. The reservations of the MK party being noted. Can I move that we adopt the 2 paragraphs as we go? Let's move on further down, I think, to the rest of the... You can remove both 10 and about 10.1. Mola. Yes, Mr. Makakula. Okay. Moving right along, Mashile. And that's the conclusion of the report in page 8. Are there any... Honourable Molefe, you'd raised the point earlier, and then we'll close it at this point, yeah? Honourable Molefe?
It's the point that I had raised earlier, Chair, which covers the whole report as to maybe it's my lack of understanding, and maybe just a simple clarification will suffice. Why are we taking the money from the National Revenue Fund and not from the surplus of the GPF? Because the National Revenue Fund is already stretched. We're on a shoestring budget, austerity budget, whereas the GPF is sitting with a huge surplus, running into hundreds of billions. Why don't we take the money there? Why do we choose to take it from the National Revenue Fund?
I just want to help you, Chairperson. Probably, Honourable Molefe, because probably you are not like always in the committee, I think it will be very difficult for a Chairperson to answer that, because National Treasury briefed the committee in the bill and in its entirety, and then those are the questions. I think generally the choices that have been made could have been well answered by National Treasury when they were briefing the committee. And because honourable members were there, I think now it's very difficult to go back and answer that question of the choices. So why are we not taking it from here? I think National Treasury could have easily answered that question if the honourable member was always in the committee when they present the bill. But now it's too late to answer that.
I hear that, but I think Honourable Molefe also makes what is prudent and what's important for this committee to always never lose track of, which is that regardless of the position National Treasury puts forward, we always have a duty to make sure that the national fiscus retains its own integrity. And so whilst I think it's not for me to defend the executive, I do think the question that Honourable Molefe is putting forward is an important one. But it is an important one, perhaps, for the purposes of this report. The committee itself can ask the question, but it cannot respond to it. It's not. In other words, it is important to state the point that you are making, and I'm not disagreeing with you, Honourable Molefe, in that sense. But I do think tomorrow at the debate, this question must be put forward, and must be put forward by the respective parties as they put it forward, because there's a choice that the executive have made here, which is your point. Your point is you've chosen to go to direct charges rather than using the pension fund. That's a choice. Our committee can only observe the choice and make the point, but it's not for us to respond to the point, to the choice. Honourable Bateman, then Honourable Molefe.
And just to add to that, Chair, I think that's absolutely agree with the fact that it's a good question and the fact that it's a question we can put to the executive. But just for the purposes of this bill, it's not introducing obviously it's not introducing a new expense because it's just where it is on the budget. So previously it was part of the budget vote 8 under National Treasury, Program 7. Now it's going to be below the line effectively as a direct charge. But it's not that there's now a new expense that's appearing for the fiscus. So is this an area where there could potentially be savings in the future? Well, obviously any expense line can be challenged. But this bill is not creating any new expenses, is what we've been told, and I understand. So this is just a case of, in a sense, it's an administrative matter about how it's going to be paid, not whether it's going to be paid or what's going to be paid.
Sure. Honorable Molefe.
See, my fear, Chair, of putting it below the line is that we are introducing less transparency. When it was in the National Treasury, they came here, we could ask them questions about it, and now it's going to be, actually the Treasury, they called it the top slice, part of the top slice. It assumes the importance of debt service costs and salaries. And I don't know if, okay, I was not there when the debate took place, but that does not mean that this committee cannot answer these questions, because they should have been, the committee should have satisfied itself. At this stage, the committee should be able to answer any question on this matter at this stage of the bill. So I think that the way that what we are doing now is introducing less transparency, and so we are encouraging less transparency as opposed to more transparency. We are moving from a situation where these things were handled more transparently than they will be handled in the future. Which is why I say, rather than putting it below the line, maybe you can take it to the GPF and we'll be satisfied that the board manages it transparently. But putting it below the line, Chair, is introducing something that the Constitution discourages. The Constitution wants us to be transparent.
I do think that in the tabling of amendments and schedules, and every time this matter comes, the committee will process it accordingly. So it's not like it can just remain an executive function and power. I hear your point, Honorable Molefe, and I think that point, I would rather say it must be better debated tomorrow in the House by Parliament in this regard. I think dealing with the bill itself, I think the committee satisfied itself in that regard to deal with the issue. So I'd like to move that we keep the report as has been stated in that manner, and I think I would welcome the debate tomorrow, even inside the House, Honorable Molefe.
But please note our reservations, Chair.
I do note your reservations, Honorable Member. So in the light of that, there being no, Mashile, that the SABC has gone off already. In the light of that, Honorable Members, I don't think there is any additional adjustments to the respective bill that is, to the report that is before us. Can I then move, given the adjustments that were put forward in total, can we take page 8 in that regard? We've made the adjustments. Can I then put finally, with the objection of MK, the report for the adoption of the committee? Honorable Galaga Mazibuko. Oh, they accept with reservations. Honorable Molefe, can you put MK's position clearly so that I don't miscommunicate it?
We call for division.
A division being called, there's no division here. You arrive here on day 1 and you are already calling for divisions. Where is this in the Constitution, Honorable Molefe? But, Honorable Members, I think I want to move for the adoption of the report as this particular matter, because I think it's been sufficiently debated. Is there a member who will move for the adoption of the report? I think Honorable Siete. And then seconded by Honorable Galaga Mazibuko.
With the amendments made.
With the amendments that have been made, with the reservations of MK.
No, we reject it, Chair.
Oh, you will reject
We will
That's-
reject it too.
That's 100%. That's with the rejection of MK, let me just...
But I'm interested to know, does everybody accept it?
Our Honorable Molefe, you can discuss that with them. You have stated, and I've given members an opportunity to do so. If your interests are not satisfied, speak to the respective members. Honorable members, I will then, with the report as has been tabled now, will take it as adopted by the committee. May I request Honorable Makakula to clean up this task so that we can go from there. With that in mind, Honorable members, we will then move over to the next part. May I give members a 10-minute break and then we recall and begin, if we can reconvene here at 11:45.